Oh, happy Friday. We got your mailbag questions all answered 100% correctly, or this is important, your money back. NFL free agency just around the corner. Check out the Tampa Bay Times at tampabay.com for all the latest on free agency, including some of the players that they may have their eyes on. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but it's going to unfold here pretty quickly for sure. So mailbag questions coming up, but I wanted we could have mentioned this with me and you talked about it kind of off the podcast, but now I'm going to discuss it a little bit. Do you see where around the horn, one of ESPN's sort of their staples, if you will, for a good number of years on ESPN. They're going to have their last show sometime in May. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's coming. They've announced the show's coming to an end.
Yeah.
So Tony Reale and then all the sports writers that are always on that show.
And there are many of my colleagues, and I wish they had asked me, but they did not. That said, I think, in a way, I think it's run its course a little bit. I mean, first of all, sports TV has turned into the debate show, right? And the debate show, of which I guess you could argue around the horn, they did it a little different way where they actually awarded points if you had a good take. Tony Reale, by the way, I think one of the best hosts, one of the most gracious guys, truly nice guy in our business, from what I understand. And he's been doing it, from the beginning, and he's just been terrific and makes everybody feel so comfortable. But the concept was cool because you had, a panel of people, and they would all weigh in on a series of topics and things, and then when it was their turn to speak, they would be given points. And what did you do with the points? Well, at the end of the day, if you won the contest, you got to have, about 30 seconds to give your editorial spiel for whatever that was on that particular day. So, but man, you run down the list of people that have been on this show. It's really sort of a who's who of ESPN, if you will. And I was just looking at it. The Kevin Clarks, the L. Duncans, the Mina Kimes, Jen Latta, and the biggest ones, the ones that kind of started it all, or one of the ones that started it all, was Woody Page. Now, Woody Page from Denver, he was, for years, I think it was years, it might have been a few years, but he was on with Skip Bayless. Like, they began sort of the debate era, if you will, in TV sports, and they did it on ESPN. And they started really on a program called Cold Pizza, which was sort of like, I think that the idea, and I've never talked to him about this, but based on what I gathered, it sounded a lot like the Today Show, only about sports, right? They talked about a lot of sports, and they had this cool sort of brownstone warehouse feel to it in New York, not far from Madison Square Garden. Jay Crawford, who's from Tampa, or at least worked here for a long time. Channel 28 was the host. Dana Jacobson, who I got to know very well. And then they bring people up there, but the main guys debating every day were Skip, and Woody. And the thing is, when they were out, they'd bring in some guest hosts, and they'd have a bunch of different people on Cold Pizza. Well, then that eventually debate became the thing. Now, when they first started at Cold Pizza, the debate portion of the show, there were just four quick segments. They were all about 2 minutes each, 3 minutes each, whatever. And they would space them throughout the show, and they just have a topic. If we were talking about the NFL, then it'd be like, boom, who should the Cowboys quarterback be? Right? And they'd riff on that for a while. And then it became the whole damn show. So they had this really, expensive real estate in New York and all that. And then they eventually moved the enterprise to Bristol, renamed it First Take. And then it was just debate right at that point. But I was up there a couple times, and we're going to get to the Round of Horde in a minute too. But I was up there a couple times, and what's interesting about it is, there's very little that's spontaneous in television, to be honest with you. You go to a pre-production meeting, and
wait a minute, reality TV is not real?
Yeah. It's not. It's actually it's an oxymoron. It really doesn't make sense. Everything's sort of scripted, and to the extent that, like, there's a production meeting in the mornings, at least on this show there was at the time, and I assume still, but you'd have to get there like hella or early because the show came on at like 7 a.m. I think. But So you're in these meetings, and they'll go, who should the Cowboys quarterback be? It's like, well, should it be Dak or some other guy? And they'll want to know, what's your take? What's your take around the table? And you tell them, you say, well, Dak Prescott and coming off the injury, whatever. You give your reasons, and here's your sort of your debate. And then Skip would sit back and listen to all of this, right? Here's your attack mode. Here's your go-to card. Here's your real convincer. And then he would use your own argument against you when you got onto the set and the cameras were rolling. It was really annoying. It's almost like he kind of like, I know you're going to say, and then he'd take away your whole argument. So I got to be, in the few times I was up there, I learned like strategy, and everybody's like, yeah, just kind of like very briefly say, what you're going to say without actually telling anybody what it is. And then maybe you can get one over on them that way. But it was fun. Like, like I said, at the time, they were good friends, and Jana Jacobson and Jay Crawford, who was from here. The one time I was up there, though, debating also, Warwick Dunn it was kind of me and Warwick against Skip. It was Skip that day. And I think we beat him up pretty good. Warwick, for a while, was working for ESPN, as was Derek Brooks, as was Sean King, doing some TV football stuff at the time, not too far removed from their playing days. And so that was interesting too. But it's fascinating to see that show get put together the way it was, where everything is scripted. You can still have your takes, but they want to know what they are beforehand. And then, Tony Reali's show, that kind of morphed into that a little bit, where, they would have a block of writers, like 4 writers, and they would come up with topics, and they'd all have to sort of go down the line, and Reali would score them based on just his own prejudices, or, whether he thought the person was making sense. And at the end of the day, the quote unquote winner gets to do about a, I don't know, 25-second monologue about whatever they want to talk about. So that show was, I always thought, was interesting. And man, did they employ a lot of people, from my business, gave them a lot of opportunities. You had your regulars, your Tim Calishaws and some of the people like that. And Woody Page was on there for a while after he left First Take. Bill Plaschke was a regular. Bob Ryan from the Boston Globe. So it was a lot of the same guys. And I think, unfortunately, like it, so many things, it's driven by ratings. And so whether it's the questions or the topic, so much of it is like, where would we get the most eyeballs if we talked about X, And so consequently, we did a ton of Cowboy stuff. It seemed unfair at the time because they weren't very good at the time, but that's what we did. But it's fascinating. And I think this show, it was good. I enjoyed it. They gave a lot of young people, opportunities to get on the air and talk and things like that. The one that's still going, though, Steve, is the one that kind of reminded you, when you hired me and Tom Jones, of what we could maybe do on radio, and that's PTI. That's Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the conversation that was happening in the Washington Post newsroom for 25 years.
Yes.
But never made it on the air. And that's, what you and Tom had been doing for
25 years,
25 years, whatever. I mean, that's
right.
When we had the opening at DAE, it wasn't like I targeted you guys together.
No. You didn't even ask us together. You asked us separately.
No. I mean, I didn't really know either one of you very well.
No.
You were on my radar just from covering the Bucs.
Sure.
Tom was just kind of a throwaway line to him.
Ironically, he was writing about media.
Yeah. He called me to ask why Dan Cilio wasn't employed anymore and why we let him go.
The job we would eventually fill.
Yeah. And so he was calling. I've told this story before, but he, had called me for comment. What happened, blah, blah, blah. He called me the day before it happened and the day of. And, then, of course, as a reporter, he asked, what are you going to do in that spot? And one, I didn't know at the time. And
right.
Two, because I wasn't anticipating having an opening. And then two, I don't really want to give him a quote or an answer on that.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave him the throwaway line of, well, are you interested?
You weren't
And,
expecting that one.
well, and he goes, no,
I don't know the radio.
but it was done so that I don't have to answer the question, because now I've thrown the question back at him, and he's saying he's stumbling over like, oh no, I couldn't, oh, okay, good, well, thanks for calling, but
Right.
and
Nice
so
icebreaker. Good
so it's funny.
segue.
So you're sitting there going, now I got an opening, got to figure out what's going on, and I knew I wanted two people together.
Right.
I didn't want a solo show. I wanted two people, so I was trying to figure that out. But the
Right.
next day, Tom calls back, and he's like, I was thinking about what you asked.
Were you
And
serious?
I might be interested. And I was like, I had no, it wasn't like I was sitting there going, I think he'd be good at it. What he said,
you had no
I some
idea.
interest.
Yeah.
But he also writes for media in the town, and I'm running a radio station in town, so I'm not
Right.
going to blow him off.
No.
So it's, okay, well, let's talk about it. So we set up a time to meet, I don't know, the next week or whatever.
Right.
And so started talking to him, engaging, liked it. He had good ideas, was talking to you. I was talking to other people as well. And, it just kind of worked out, because when I asked everybody I was talking to, I was like, who could you work with?
Right.
Because I knew I wanted two people. I didn't want a solo show.
Yeah.
And, people gave names, but you gave Tom's name. Tom gave your name. And neither one of you knew you were talking to me.
That was so bizarre that we both, knew instantly like who we would have that sort of PTI vibe with, and it was Tom, and for him it was me.
So then eventually we all met as a group.
Yep.
And then I put you in a studio together, off air.
That's right. We did like what would you call those, auditions?
Yeah, we were in the little Ward Beck studio at WFLA and WDAE.
Yep.
And you guys just riffed for, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes.
Just talk sports, yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of said, okay, talk Rays. And you guys talk some Rays, you talk some Lightning, talk some Bucs.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that natural chemistry you guys had.
Yeah. Although, natural or not, when you learned radio, which we knew nothing about, and we had to be taught everything literally, it took a good minute for us to be able to do the mechanics of it.
Yeah, you didn't have the mechanics and the theatrics of it, but the chemistry and you had different takes from each other.
Yeah, and we were both practicing journalists, and so we had practical experience and different experiences. And he actually was a beat writer covering hockey, which was nice. I played college baseball, obviously followed the Rays. Tom was a columnist writing about everything. I was writing about the Bucs since 1990 or something like that. So we had all that down. That part of it was easier, but the radio, learning the radio part was not. And it took a while you get to some point, a little like this podcast, where you kind of forget like you actually have an audience. You just go, you're kind of talking to each other. And the off-air shows are much better than what you got on the air. We got mad at each other a few times, and I don't want to make this a big thing, but like
it happens.
Yeah, like you would carry it over into the break. It was like we never arm wrestled or threw punches.
That had happened at DAE before, though.
Oh yeah, you have. I think
more
we
than once.
Yeah, I think we might have ducked a few of those. But look, we weren't really sure what was going to happen when Ronnie D came in after our show every day. I can tell you that. Never saw a guy walk with his back to the wall all the way out of a building before until Tom did it. But that said, yeah, it was an interesting time. But yeah,
it was the chemistry and that's what.
That's what
Kornheiser
and Wilbon have. And I think that's why their show I mean, look, the other shows are still out there too. I'm tired of debate. One of the things I learned, doing the network stuff was like what you think is important may be important, but if it doesn't sell, right? Like those guys, there's no secret that when you turn on NFL Live or any of those shows, they're going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys can be 2-14. It doesn't matter. The Cowboys move the needle. And I'm fine with that because in some ways I've gotten past the point. I'm like, hey, play the hits, man. That's what everybody wants to hear. Ariana Grande or, Billie Eilish, we're playing them. We're playing them all hour, every hour, every day. Because that's how you make money in this business. But, when you get to the network thing, like when we sat down and we're discussing topics, like invariably have to be the Cowboys every day. Like there had to be a Cowboys. It's like it was mandated. It's like it was like, I don't really want to talk about it. I don't care. We got one. It's like here it is. Here's our Cowboys of the day. and then sometimes it would amount to something in mushroom, and sometimes it wouldn't.
Well, that's why when Tom Brady came to Tampa Bay, all of a sudden you were on Patrick's show and Eisen's
Oh,
show
yeah.
every other week for 3
Every week.
years,
Yeah.
and then he left and they forgot your number.
Well, they did. They did.
I mean,
and Dan has apologized. He had me on this year.
he's apologized, but he's not changing it.
No, it was a win more games.
They're playing the hits too.
Basically said win more games. Yeah, I mean Baker Mayfield. While interesting, it isn't going to move the needle like the Dallas Cowboys or some other team up north. Any New York team, Aaron Rodgers. It doesn't matter if you're winning or losing up there. And that's just the way it is. Whether you're talking about digital, whether you're talking about broadcast, and they don't make excuses for it, but it is sort of the way it is. And but I did get on there before. Dan had me back, I think, before the Bucs played their playoff game this past year against Washington, and they came oh so close to winning that one. But
but he wasn't having you on in the regular season.
No, nothing, no, because it wasn't Brady. I mean, Brady's his own. Like Brady's a rainmaker, man. Wherever Brady goes, money's falling out of his pockets, and not just because he's getting paid, but he's fertilizing the earth beneath him with dollar bills that other people can take advantage of. I've never seen somebody who, sort of exuded that sort of star power where anyone around them, anybody in the room where it happened is going to benefit from it. But that's the way it was, with Tom. So yeah, so that show's done, going to be done here soon. And I thought it was great. There's only one reality. I'm not sure it would have worked with anybody else, but he certainly did a great job. And I like debate. I just don't want it shoved down my throat 24/7. I think ESPN has gotten into this thing where it's Stephen A. every platform. Sometimes Mike Greenberg, way too many platforms. You can kind of go down the list, and it's sort of the same people on every show or Sports Center or what have you. Which I don't know is necessarily great to have the same takes all the time, but
they're banking on personalities.
They are,
and that's what they invested their money, whether it's Stephen A. or Pat McAfee or Mike Greenberg. Like, it's about personalities, and shows like Around the Horn. Yes, all those writers had personalities in this, but it wasn't the star of the show. It wasn't. You weren't coming to Around the Horn to watch Woody Page or
no. And you got it was a panel show,
I mean,
so you got like 60 seconds max, right? Like 30 seconds here and there. So that part was different. I mean, Tony Reale was the star of that show, but I don't know how many people were tuning in for him and his outstanding hair. Man, the dude has some serious lettuce, man. I tell you what, man, I'm jealous of that lettuce. You know what I mean? By the way, speaking of Johnny, have you seen these videos? He's on the interweb, as the kids call it.
Yeah. Well, he's getting swag sent to him from all these colleges.
That's what I was going to say. Like, every school now, because he opened a couple. So I got one from Dayton. The other day, Dayton sent him a box. He had no idea how to open this box.
Yeah, well, so South Florida got smart. They didn't send a box. They just sent it in a bag.
A duffel. Yeah, they sent him a big duffel. It's like a kid on Christmas morning. It's so funny. Yeah, look at this, man. Look at this University of South Florida. I like this. This got a hoodie on it.
Yeah. Alex Golish.
Alex Golish, man. What about that guy, huh? But yeah, he's just he's into all the swag. Hopefully he keeps it. If not, I'll be over there to pick it up soon, John, because I love swag too.
Might want to check the Goodwill store by him, see if he's dropping anything off.
I don't know. I really don't. What he really wants is a job offer in one of those bags. Would be nice, I'll tell you what, man. Here's a hat. Whoa, here's one that says I'm coaching receivers. Oh my God, yeah, I'll take that job. But he was on with. I talked to him a few days ago. We went into the back into the Bucs. Back into the Bucs Ring of Honor, and he was very appreciative of that. But he said in the past, like, yeah, I just want to coach. You know what I mean? I might coach high school. I might go down to the Pop Warner League over here. And he might. That's the thing. Like, he actually might. But for right now, FFCA and Barstool Sports, man.
I mean, Teddy Bridgewater went and coached the high school championship, then got signed again in the NFL. So, I mean,
How cool is that, by the way? I told you got to do it this way. Okay, I'm gonna go, join the Lions now. Jeez. Will you be back next fall, Coach? How about spring practice? What are we gonna do? Yeah, Bridge was he's one of my favorite quarterbacks, and he went through a lot, obviously, with his injuries and things coming out of Louisville. But That was kind of cool to see the Lions do that actually at the end of the year. We got some mailbag questions coming. I want to remind you guys, go see our sponsors here at Breitling Boutique. The Breitling Company, they've been making these Swiss watches now for over 140 years, but they've been in International Plaza for just over 5. And when you go in there, it's in the center of the mall. Go upstairs. First of all, enjoy the building, right? Like the store is unique. The customer service is second to none. You're going to go in, sit down, have a drink, plan to spend some time there because you're going to learn about the great watches that they have, the chronomats, the Navitimers, women's sports watches. The thing that they've been sort of separating themselves for really since before the holidays, if you haven't gotten a gift yet, what's your problem? Is they have a special collection of the NFL's watches, 104th year anniversary watches. All 32 teams are represented in some form or fashion. We're talking about these beautiful chronomat watches have the face of the team colors. They have the logo in there. And if you go on tampabay.com, you'll probably see a picture of one from the Buccaneers. It's stunning. If you haven't been there, what's taking you so long? It's Breitling Boutique. Go upstairs, center of the mall. Bring your wife or girlfriend. They got plenty of jewelry for her, especially the sports watches with the various colored wristbands. She's going to love you for it, but you're going to also love the value that you get in getting one of these great Swiss watches. It's Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Make sure you tell them that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. All right, we got some mailbag questions before we get out of here on this beautiful Friday. Let's get started.
All right, Ali from the UK tweeted us, says, sounds like the Bucs will focus heavily on defense in the NFL draft. But which positions on offense do you see them taking a look at?
Well, I would start with the position that surprised me when we were at the Combine. Todd Bowles mentioned right after the defense. And I think when you say defense, really any position, but he was talking about edge rusher and linebacker and safety in particular, maybe a corner or so. But what he mentioned was receiver. And it makes sense, right? Because as we do this podcast right now, and this could change any second, the Bucs do not have an agreement with Chris Godwin to return in the 2025 season. He's set to become a free agent on March 12th at 4 p.m. That could still happen. The goal, obviously, would be to get him locked up in some way or another. But coming off that injury where his ankle was pointed the wrong direction and you got leg fractures and that sort of thing, as a team, you sort of want to protect yourself. You want to protect yourself. And if you can structure a deal that makes sense for both sides in case he re-injures that thing, then great. If not, and maybe even if so, because, Godwin's no spring chicken. I mean, he's 29. Mike Evans is well into his 30s now. He's going to be 32 next season. You have to ask, how many more years can these guys really be productive? And, when Godwin was out, we saw certain young players step up, including Jalen McMillan. So is this a good time if the draft falls that way? Because I think the one thing you don't want to do, even though you need all defensive players, you don't want to shoehorn some guy that really isn't a good player that you're just saying, well, we had to have, an edge rusher, or we had to have an inside linebacker and just grab the best one available at the time. I think you want impact players. So, look, I mean, for that reason, I think they could go receiver and maybe go early, and then come back and address the defense later. You need playmakers, and this offense is prolific, but whether it's free agency, whether it's the draft, I think they're going to get at least one more receiver because of Mike's age, because of Godwin's injury status, whether he's back or not. He may not even be back, in which case you definitely need somebody to play off of Mike, in that offense. So that'd be interesting. But yeah, receiver is what I got you for. And then, they could always use a guard. If they don't re-sign Ben Bredesen, then it'd be nice for them to get a guard. I saw where Alex Kappa got released by Cincinnati, picked up by the Raiders, by the way, signed a couple-year deal there with John Spytek, who was part of the group that drafted him. So Spytek hoping to change the scenery, and maybe some friendly faces will bring out the best in Alex Kappa.
I think offensive line, no question. Like, you should take that every draft.
Yeah,
it's one of the most important positions. And you've got
really,
5
Jason
positions
kind
on
of
that
has,
line.
right? Like he's kind of been like on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, it may not be the top 2 or 3 rounds, but you're going to take alignment, and it's not offense per se, but they may need to look at a punter as well.
Oh, they definitely do.
Much later. I mean, they may just go free agent with it, or undrafted guy. But
it's a great point.
Punting was a mess this year.
Great
they
point.
went through 3 of them.
and we were at we this is actually a funny moment. I should post it. Uh, he was asked about the priorities and how high is a priority as punter, and he just kind of gave it a laugh. And somebody says, "Well, do you know, like, how do you personally evaluate punters?" And he goes, "Well, do they shank it or not?" It's like he goes, "I know nothing about punting." He goes, "As long as they don't shank it, then they got a chance." He goes, "But it's really just that. That's all it is. Do they shank it or not?" So yeah, they're looking for somebody who's not a shankopotamus. But whether they draft a guy, they've been burned that way both on punters and place kickers at times. I'm not sure what they're going to do there, but punter for sure. Wide receiver, I think, is on that list too.
Yeah, and they may look at a tight end too.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, Kate Otten's showing he can and do some stuff, but at some point he's going to get to a bigger contract in that. And are you satisfied with him at that, or do you want somebody else? Like,
Yeah.
I think, and they may draft a quarterback. Late. They may not. I don't think so, but
yeah,
who's your backup quarterback this year?
They really like this Michael Pratt, and look,
Mhm.
it's a risk, right? If you're going to put a guy that's never played before behind Baker Mayfield who could get hurt, and if it were to happen early in the season, you'd be like, "What? What do we just do?" But Pratt from Tulane had a chance to join up with the team. Michael did, late in the year. He basically played scout squad quarterback because he was just so damn athletic and he could impersonate, on the football field anyway, some of the guys that the Bucs were going to go up against. But he's certainly, certainly won. And
I don't think they're going to take a second rounder like Kyle Trask. But
no,
could you take a 6th or 7th round project like Brock Purdy was, or if
or would you sign a Gardner Minshew, for example? Right? Would you do that? Journeyman
yeah, you
backup?
could. You absolutely could as back. I'm thinking more of a third quarterback development.
Yeah,
for
that
the
would be
future.
great. Yeah, that would be great.
I don't know who's out there and what they think of them. I mean, you don't take one just to take one, but if there's a quarterback that is in the 6th round and you think has potential, Brock Purdy was a 7th rounder, Tom Brady was a 6th rounder. I mean, occasionally those do pan out.
If it were me, I'd draft one every year because the position's that important, right? Maybe I don't hit on one the first 5 years, but then the 6th year, a guy pops up in the 5th or 6th round. I'm like, bingo, that's my guy. Because like you said, Purdy ended up coming out of nowhere, Mr. Irrelevant.
They took Trey Lance in the same draft, and he was supposed to be the starter and
absolutely
the quarterback of their future. And
absolutely, and they ended up cutting him loose. And he's now with the Cowboys, not playing. So, yeah, those are all considerations for sure. But yeah, keep an eye on receiver.
All right, Les tweeted us. He says, Rick, time for the all too early Rays prediction. By the way, opening day 3 weeks from today. I see great starting pitching, trouble with the bullpen, hot and cold offense, plus that brutal July-August schedule. They'll be good, winning 86 games, but behind the O's and Yanks, missing the playoffs. What say you?
Whew, that is way too early prediction. I think their pitching staff, as it's comprised right now, is elite. Don't know, and rarely do they all stay healthy. So that's definitely a concern. The bullpen, I have more faith in probably than you do. And then offensively, Cameron O is a stud. He's an absolute superstar. I think a lot of it depends on, what they get from their left-handed bats in that short perch, right? Whether it's Brandon Lau, Josh Lowe. I mean, if they can get some pop back in their bats, obviously they have a new catcher who's got some pop. Concerns, I mean, it's scoring runs. I like their bullpen too. I think they've got some live arms down there that came in last year and got some experience and did a good job. I don't see a lot of weaknesses. Let's see how they catch the ball. You got to catch the ball. You got some new outfielders out there, whether it's Johnny DeLuca, some others maybe perhaps playing every day.
Yep.
So you're going to have to catch the baseball, but for the most part, it's always going to be offense with me. Like where the run's going to come from, where the big fly is going to come from.
Here's the thing. They don't have to get that much better offensively.
No.
Overall. They have to hit better with runners in scoring position.
Yes.
Like they were abysmal at that last year. As bad as their offense was, it was worse. A lot worse with runners in scoring position. And that just destroyed them. Like,
yeah.
You don't have to You don't have to have base runners on every inning, but when you get them on, you got to get a couple in a row and get that momentum going.
Yeah.
And this era of baseball with the long ball and everything else, it's not about how many hits you get. It's can you string them together in the same inning?
Yeah.
And
I also think
that's what they were really bad at last year.
They're going to steal a ton of bases too, like a ton of bases, in my opinion. I think they'll put a lot of pressure on offenses, and then when it gets to be hot and sticky around here, who's to say? Who's to say? He mentioned predictions. I would say they're going to do better than 86 wins. I'm going to give them 80, 88.
88. Okay, not 100 losses. Okay, that's good.
No, that was my downfall. You always got to remember that. It was early in the podcast. I didn't know what I was saying. I was like, they're going to lose 100, and then they won 100.
Who they traded? Just traded Dickerson to Pittsburgh, and it was
right.
That seems going to be awful.
That was the last straw. Dickerson, way to go to the mat. Yeah. They're going to lose 100. And whenever they ever lost 100, you got to go back to the Namoli days, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think.
I don't think Kevin Cash has lost 100.
I think the early when the Stu Sternberg took over, they did.
Yeah. Oh, Joe Madden did for sure. His first year, yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it hasn't been often for sure.
No. I'll give him 89.
Yeah. All right. Sam had emailed us. He says, longtime listener to a native of these parts going back to the early 70s. I've never once heard Tampa and St. Pete collaborating on any large-scale projects that would benefit the public. Meanwhile, in Denver, every stadium is funded by all 7 counties that surround the city. And every stadium in Minneapolis is supported from funding from St. Paul. Down here, instead of Twin Cities, we apparently have frenemies giving each other the silent treatment. Why isn't the Ray Stadium problem being solved by a regional effort to build in the best location to serve the most people?
Because people in St. Pete absolutely hate everybody in Tampa. I don't know. It's funny.
Well,
I grew up in St. Pete, and so I never thought of Tampa and rarely came here except when there was an event going on at that time. The old Tampa Stadium, the Big Sombrero, or Houlihan's, or when it became Raymond James. It's funny what a body of water will do. It's just literally just a geographic divide, and traffic is a factor. I don't know why there's not collaboration, though. It's a great question. If there was,
I think a lot of it is you got to look at the governor's mansion, and if the state's not going to jump in and help, which DeSantis is very much opposed to.
Yes, he is.
That then, each city or county is looking out for themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, the funding from St. Paul and Minneapolis, because that's where the state capital is, and it's the states helping that.
Gotcha.
And when you have a state like Florida where the governor is very much opposed to almost all sports spending.
Yeah.
There's a few exceptions. It's funny, as there always is in politics, but when he's opposed to any new sports funding and stadium stuff, and has very much been opposed to helping the Rays do anything, then the counties aren't going to work with each other. They have all got their own issues and problems. It starts at the top, and one of the consequences of having, and I don't mean that negatively, if you support the governor, great. If you don't, that's fine too. But the type of governor that Ron DeSantis isn't going to help find a regional solution for stuff.
No.
That's not the way that his administration and the governorship's going to operate under him. And Rick Scott was very similar in that regard too beforehand. And that's just, when you elect that type of governor, that's some of the consequences. When you elect a different type, there's other consequences. That's kind of the way it works.
Yep. Indeed it does. Busy weekend on tap. We got the Lightning playing the afternoon game. I think it's around 3:00 on ABC against the Boston Bruins, right?
And so 3:00. So early start here in Tampa. So if you got tickets, don't forget that it's not a night game. It's not often day games here.
No, it's right in the middle of the afternoon, which is cool though. It's great to go there. So you watch the game, then you're downtown. So go out to dinner and still make it early night. So that's great, and great to see them back on national television as well. We are just a few days away, really, from the start of free agency on the 12th. And before that, we expect to get some news, if you haven't heard it already, on Chris Godwin, on some of the free agents that the Bucs may be interested in when the curtain, the sort of curtain drops at 4 p.m., I guess, on the 12th. But, I think Obviously, the Bucs are talking to Godwin, trying to get something done. It's a tough deal to do because of his injury, etc. Some of the receivers have dropped off. Others have been added to the free agency list out there that he's competing with. So we'll see what his value is and whether the Bucs can afford him. But that's coming up here before you know it. So lots going on this weekend in sports. Also, go down and make sure you pay a visit to our friends at Breitling Boutique International Plaza Mall. Great collection of Swiss watches. The Breitling company has been in business for a long time, and right now they've got these gorgeous team watches, NFL team watches, for the 104th year anniversary of the NFL while they last. So check them out. When you go there, make sure you tell them that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great weekend, everybody.